Thank you so much for joining us for this meeting today. It's our first virtual bi-monthly meeting, and we have two Montgomery County officials with us. Thank you, Council Member Evan Glass, for joining us for today's meeting. And we also have Mr. Chris Conklin, who is the Director of Montgomery County Department of Transportation. A video that was made by one of the student interns on bus rapid transit.
Montgomery County is currently moving toward establishing a network of bus rapid transit routes. Together, these routes will fill an important void in our country's transportation system and help increase sustainability. Please watch the upcoming presentation to learn more about BRT at home and around the world, as well as how it has revolutionized the public transit rider experience. It's time to move more rapidly to create our BRT network, and you can make this happen. Click on the link in the last slide to take action and send a message to show your support for progress. The map shown highlights the 11 BRT corridors that have been master planned here in Montgomery County. In particular, Route 29 is shown in blue, Route 355 is shown in gray, and the Veers Mill route is shown in green. BRT creates a modern and effective transportation system attractive to riders and central to a sustainable community. BRTs are characterized first of all by dedicated lanes. These lanes are often median lanes so as to avoid curbside conflict. Additionally, fares are collected at the stations pre-boarding as opposed to on buses. BRT stations also include platform-level boarding, improving accessibility for wheelchairs, bicycles, and strollers. Currently, the BRT serves 33,365,237 passengers per day in 170 different cities worldwide. Colombia's BRT, called the Transmilenio, is one of the most well-known BRT systems around the world. Transmilenio incorporates all of the characterizing features of BRT, and this is what has made it such a success. For example, because of dedicated lanes, the Transmilenio buses can avoid the city's gridlock problems. In fact, more than 20% of Transmilenio riders actually own cars, choosing instead to use the BRT. This has helped boost fare quality in the city by 40%. Transmilenio buses average a speed of about 20 miles per hour, much faster than New York City's buses, which average about 8 miles per hour. The Transmilenio system was planned with accessibility in mind, covering about 85% of Bogota. The Transmilenio has been highly successful, carrying a little over 2.4 million passengers every day. China's most successful BRT boasts the highest passenger flow in the world and was the first system worldwide to incorporate a bike-sharing system along the corridor, further increasing the mobility and general quality of life of a large sector of the population. The BRT carries about 850,000 commuters per day. Due to dedicated lanes away from traffic and congestion-related conflicts, passengers are able to save a combined 32 million hours on daily commutes per year. With 30% higher bus speeds, passengers experience 20% better travel times for those who previously rode cars and 29% for those who previously rode regular buses. Ohio's Helpline incorporates all of the characterizing features of BRT, such as dedicated lanes, off-board fare collection, and stations with raised platforms. The buses are modern and built for a sustainable city. Commutes were shortened as the travel time between Public Square and University Circle, the two ends of the route, decreased from 40 to 28 minutes. The Helpline was just what the public wanted. Ridership went up 48% the first year, climbing by about 5% each year since. Comparing the Helpline to the previous bus line, annual ridership was up 60%. Washington Swift Prt is another example of this progress in the United States. Each day, the BRT serves about 4,400 riders, with buses arriving every 10 minutes on weekdays and stopping at stations for only 10 seconds due to an off-board fare collection system. Raised platforms and onboard bike racks make the BRT accessible and convenient for all riders. Travel time from Everett Station to Aurora Village decreased by 20 minutes, and additional lines are currently being developed for increased connectivity due to its success. Closer to home, Virginia's Pulse BRT, which was inspired by Ohio's Helpline, drew twice the number of riders than originally expected. Transit use in Virginia was up 17% in the year the system was opened. The BRT features bike parking and shelter from the elements at stations. Level boarding, real-time arrival announcements, and off-boarding fare collection help make the boarding process faster and accessible for all riders. Like the Helpline, California's Orange Line BRT is seen as a model example of this system. The Orange Line serves 26,670 riders daily. With features such as dedicated lanes and pre-boarding fare collection, the BRT cuts commutes across the valley in half, and buses run 30 to 50% quicker than run-of-the-mill buses. In its first year open, ridership tripled. Additionally, there are biking and walking paths along the corridor, further improving the commuting as well as living experience. This is another map of the proposed BRT corridors in Montgomery County. Route 29, 355, and the Viersville route are shown highlighted. Route 29 is shown in blue, Route 355 is shown in red, and the Viersville route is shown in turquoise.
So that was a video made by Eva Chavez, who was a student intern and spent her summer creating this wonderful video. This is the first time that we are showing this video in public. And one of the last slides that you might have noticed was actually an action slide where we wanted to be able to put an action alert and talk about what's next when we show this video to the public. We haven't yet come up with our what's next action item, but we will talk about that later. And this was to give everyone who might be joining in some time to join the meeting, and also just something for you to think about as we do a few introductions and get started with our program today. So to begin with, I would like to start by introducing all the Sierra Club Montgomery County Group XCOM members. Hi, my name is Shruti Bhatnagar. I'm the chair of Sierra Club Montgomery County. As I call names, please wave. Hopefully everyone can see you. Brian Ditzler, he's the delegate to Sierra Club Montgomery County, Sierra Club Maryland, and also the lead for the transportation for Sierra Club Maryland. We have Jennifer Rossmeyer, who is the treasurer. Dave Sears, who's the lead for land use. Amy Maron, who is the zero waste lead. Clint Sobrati, who's on the transportation committee. And last but not the least, the most important person today is Tina Slater, who is our transportation lead. Hey, Tina. So we have an amazing team, and all of us are really committed to working with our community, our elected officials, to advocate for environmental issues, and I'm really glad to see all of you today. With that, the first person I would like to recognize is our council member, Evan Glass. Thank you so much, council member, for joining us today. And I would like to request you to make some remarks and share some information with us.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation, Shruti, and thank you all for taking some time out of your Monday evening to be on Zoom. I appreciate all of your leadership and advocacy on these issues, and I know that you're going to be getting into a deeper conversation with the county's Department of Transportation Director, Chris Conklin. And so I will just give you a very brief overview on a few items without getting into some of the specifics that I know he will. And then I'll speak briefly, and then if anyone has any questions, we can do that for just a few minutes or so. But one of the other things I want to thank all of you for is your advocacy regarding the attempts to repeal the plastic bag fee. You know, I was never in support of that legislation. One of two members of the council who were not co-sponsors, who didn't support it from the beginning. And it really was, I'm being very, very honest with you, it was your action alerts and all of you who wrote into the council that got my colleagues to realize that repealing the 5-cent fee was not the most enlightened policy to make it this time. You know, for me, the safest way to protect our frontline workers, our grocery store clerks, our cashiers, myself and other patrons at the supermarket is for me to wear a mask, wear at least one glove, and then to use my reusable bag. And I pack it all myself, I scan it all myself, and I leave. And so that I don't have to interact with anybody. And for me, that's the safest thing we can do. And that's why maintaining the current policies, I think, worked. Not to mention the Department of Environmental Protection also has tens of thousands of bags that we give out on an annual basis. So if anyone needs a bag, reach out to me or reach out to the Department of Environmental Protection and we can get you some of those bags. I'm really glad that Chris Conklin, Director Conklin, is here this evening. We work very closely together, and a few weeks ago, when the Governor Hogan, mandated that face coverings had to be worn in all the grocery stores and other types of settings, including on public transit, I reached out to the department and said, well, if people have to take transit to get to work because they are essential personnel or because they have no other options than taking our ride-on system, we should be as accommodating as possible and putting masks on our buses. And he and his team quickly worked with the Department of Homeland Security here and Dr. Travis Gales and other leaders in the county. And within a very short period of time, got all of our ride-on buses outfitted with PPE, with face masks specifically. And so I think that is a really good step, and it's a testament to not only our support for public transportation, but our support for the people who take public transportation. So Director Conklin, thank you very much for your ability to turn that around really quickly. Just a few other things real quick. We've been talking a lot about open streets, making sure that people can safely congregate outside, get outside for health, mental health, physical health, and the Parks Department and Director Conklin have been working dutifully to do as much as we can. He'll get into more specifics, I know, but want you all to know that I've been involved in those conversations and really appreciate, again, everybody recognizing the situation that we're in and figuring out what we can do. And so the rules and regulations, and this is actually one of the things that I think is a silver lining to this current situation. All the rules and regulations that have been built upon themselves here in the county and in other levels of government, we're starting to throw them out the window, recognizing that we can't stand on years of precedent and the attitude of, well, that's just the way we do things, because things have changed. And I hope that attitude continues after we return to normal, whatever that normal might be. Shruti started this conversation by showing the video about bus rapid transit. We had a very robust conversation about bus rapid transit in the capital improvements project. I know Chris can get into that with you there when he talks as well, but I'll let you know that one of the concerns I had when we were talking about bus rapid transit is I'm concerned that we've continued to study bus rapid transit for a little too long. And I am actually more interested in building bus rapid transit than in studying bus rapid transit. When we look at DC and we look in Virginia, they're turning around these infrastructure projects in just a few years. Why can't we? So I said that much during our hearing about those projects. I think I was a little more emotional than I am now about my displeasure with the speed at which bus rapid transit is moving forward, but we're moving forward. So I'm at least heartened about that, because it does have to be recognized that those who were in county government over the last number of years at various levels might not had such an affinity for bus rapid transit as I do, and as I know the county executive does, because just to remember, it was his idea more than a decade ago to have a bus rapid transit system here in Montgomery County. And then one last thing I'll end on, also budget related. We in the council retained the $400,000 that we put into the budget last year for continued environmental study for the Climate Mobilization Task Force. We added $400,000 last year. The county executive has convened a number of teams across all of county government that have, I think, put together 700 or so recommendations. Once we are out of this crisis, I look forward to digging in deeper, particularly as a member of the Transportation and Environment Committee on those recommendations, seeing what is possible. But we've put another $400,000 into this budget so that we can continue doing that hard work and reducing our carbon emissions, improving our transportation infrastructure, and I know also doing a lot of work within the recycling sector as well. and waste management. So with that, I'll stop talking. Shruti, I defer to you with how, you know, if you want to entertain any questions, or I'm happy to have dinner and say goodbye.
I like that idea. I totally like that idea. Well, first of all, yes, if someone has a question, I did say in the chat, we can take a couple of questions. Please put it in. I also want to thank you, Evan, for participating in the Zero Waste Plastic Story panel and discussion. That was very interesting and informative, and we appreciate how you continue to engage with Sierra Club and also continue to speak up for environmental issues. So thank you for your leadership and working with us. I don't see any questions for you. I think your presentation was so excellent. People are just speechless. And but you know where to find Evan, so no harm done. We will follow up with you. See, we have a thumbs up from Kathleen. All right, everyone, if you liked Evan's presentation,
have a good evening, everybody.
Please react with a thumbs up. Thank you. At this point, I also want to give a shout out to Paula Posas. We cannot see her, but she is there. You see the name, and she is our new Deputy Director for Sierra Club, Maryland. There she is. Hey, Paula, give us a wave, and sorry, I'm going to unmute you so you can introduce yourself.
Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to being involved with you more. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. With no further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mr. Chris Conklin. And as you know, Christopher Conklin was confirmed on October 29th, 2019 by the Montgomery County Council as the new Director of MCDOT. He has served as Deputy Director for Transportation Policy since joining the county in August 2016, was nominated for the Director's position in October by County Executive Mr. Mark Elrich. Over the past 3 years, Mr. Conklin guided the implementation of the new transit services like the Ride on Flex, Executive Connector, and the US 29 Flash project. He has worked to advance pedestrian safety and bicycle infrastructure projects, represented the county in regional efforts to secure long-term capital funding for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, improved development review processes, and led sustainability initiatives like the county's street light replacement program. Prior to joining MCDOT, Mr. Conklin spent 23 years at the planning, engineering, and environmental firm VHB, where he was managing director for the National Capital Region. He is recognized for his experience in multimodal transportation strategy, planning, engineering, stakeholder and public transportation, project management, and team leadership. During his career, he has worked with transportation organizations throughout the nation, including cities and towns, counties, state, regional transit agencies, and federal agencies. And I also want to thank him for working collaboratively with Sierra Club. It has been great having conversations and working with you on issues affecting our county. So with no further ado, Mr. Conklin, the stage is all yours.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. The image behind me is actually the honest to goodness BRT vehicle. We have 16 of them. They're in our Gaithersburg depot waiting for us to be ready to operate the flash service on 29. So progress is real and it's happening, and we'll be having this on the road soon. It's actually been out and about for training, at least it was until the end of April when we had some concerns about exposure to COVID in the training operation and suspended our training operation. But it will come, and there's proof, there's the actual vehicle. I do have some slides, but I will go very quickly through them. So there's the vehicle without me in front of it, interrupting you. It is bright, it's noticeable. Those doors are all very wide. It has the bike racks inside. There's no pull cord for stops. There's no fare collection equipment on it because all of that happens outside the vehicle. It's pretty exciting to see these arrive. They were built in upstate New York over the last year, and we're very happy to have them on site. We talked a little bit about the Flex. This was an on-demand service that was, again, operating up until the end of March when we suspended its operation. It was operating the Wheaton Glenmont area and in the Rockville area. 2 different times a day, and we've had a Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments study going on simultaneously to understand how it was being used and how we could improve the service. The way it works is there's an app that you go onto your mobile phone, identify where you want to stop, somewhere, a corner near your home, and where you want to go, kind of anywhere in the zone. And it programs the trips and accepts the passengers. There's no need that you actually identify who you are. You can pick an alias to use the service, so there's a higher degree of privacy than some other mobile apps. And it has a fare box which allows you to enter the transit system, take advantage of Kids Ride Free, senior programs, and transfer discounts or free bus transfers once you're in it. It did quite well, and we are looking forward to expanding it. The reason we had to suspend it is we were unable to provide the physical distancing between the operator of the vehicle and the passenger. So that's why it's on hold at the moment. Hannah, who's on the phone with us, and Darcy Buckley, who's actually pictured in this photo, obviously this is a pre-pandemic photo, have been working hard to make sure that we are being more accommodating to our customers and friendlier. So one of the policies that was implemented late last year was allowing kids to remain in strollers on the vehicles, which I think is, vastly helpful to a mother or father trying to keep their kid safe and in control and holding on to a stroller rather than wrestling a fold-up stroller and their child at the same time. And this has been very well received. All of our buses have Wi-Fi now, so you can kind of seamlessly use that on all the vehicles, and that's also helped with our vehicle location and the way we've been able to communicate that to customers, which has been an interesting experiment as we've responded to the COVID pandemic. I'll share a little bit about that with you later. Youth Cruiser was very successful. We saw about a 50% increase in the Kids Ride Free use up through March. And again, once we stop collecting fares, we're not getting this data anymore, but we're suspecting that it's not been as popular since the pandemic as kids are not riding, not making the essential trips others are on transit. The mobile commuter store has been in service for about 2 years now, and it's been very effective. It's serving areas of the county we weren't able to serve with fixed locations. So we closed one of the fixed location stores and used that budget to purchase this vehicle, and it's going to all of our transit centers and park and rides so that people can access fare media or get information about the services that are available. This is a recent picture from a couple weeks ago of Purple Line construction. Those 4 items you see here are the steel girders of the Purple Line coming over the metro at Silver Spring. And this truss structure in front is the Capitol Crescent Trail being constructed into the Silver Spring Transit Center. So notwithstanding the issues with the P3 and the contractor, construction has been advancing quite rapidly on the Purple Line, and we hope that the state and the P3 team are able to reach an agreement that allows it to continue uninterrupted. And I don't have any more information about the status of their negotiations today, excuse me, but we are in regular contact with MTA and the Mcdot secretary about it. We've been accelerating the implementation of crosswalk protection treatments. This Aspen Hill Hawk was installed last fall, and there have been others of these installed more recently. Our traffic engineering division has been doing an assessment of the types of treatments that we've been using and trying to make sure we're using the right approach in the right place. So last year, or maybe 2 years ago, we installed rapid rectangular flashing beacons on Belpre Road and are going to be transitioning them to these Hawk signals because these eliminate the multi-threat crossing problem, whereas the RRFBs don't necessarily do that. Again, this is just this fall, November. The this is Elmhurst Parkway. I don't know if I have that right. This is not Elmhurst Parkway. This was Park Valley Road. The bridge was reopened, and as part of this, we constructed a greater separation and improvements to the Sligo Creek Trail. And obviously that, excuse me, helped a lot. But now that parkway is open on weekends, so people can use the road bed as well for recreation. We completed the 2nd Avenue Wayne Bikeway, separated bikeway with the floating bus stops. We did a lot of work with the blind community, or the people who don't have full sight, to understand what the challenges were with these facilities. We got a lot of feedback that the floating bus stop was a new challenge and not helping them access transit. So we have retrofitted these a couple times to try to improve their accessibility for transit passengers. And just this few months ago, we were awarded a Transportation and Land Use Connections grant from Metropolitan Washington COG to do a whole set of evaluations and tool development for the visually impaired, and we're going to be focusing on the Silver Spring CBD as part of that. Part of this project was a separated or protected intersection at 2nd Avenue and Spring Street, which there were some challenges, at least from driver perception and behavior initially, but it seems to have been working well over the past several months once people got used to this configuration and understand that it is designed to make your turn in a vehicle a little bit more difficult. It is designed to make you slow down and pay attention as a driver, and it is designed to give clearer information to pedestrians and cyclists about how to navigate through this. So it's very different and has taken people some time to get used to, but it seems like we're past that break-in phase on this project. We've continued to expand the Capital Bike Share network. We're up at about 93 stations now. The most recent ones have been installed in the East County with the Flash project on 29. And this one was also installed at the Wheaton Library not too long ago. The e-scooter program and dockless bike program has had fits and starts with the successes and failures of all the various businesses that have been involved in that. The operators have come back. We have Bird operating in the western part of the county. We have Spin going to operate in the county, and we expect Lyft to be deploying dockless or hybrid e-bikes as part of the Capital Bike Share program very soon. And I think there's a lot of challenges with this in terms of safety, but it's also shown to be helping a lot, and people make short trips and drop the car for some of the trips they would be making between transit and other places. We continue to focus on sort of the bread and butter operations of DOT, like maintaining roads and advocating for adequate funding to keep these in a good state of good repair, which is important for everybody who uses it, walking, biking, or transit, or driving in a car. Keeping roads open and safe in the winter, including clearing snow on sidewalks that are in our inventory in places where the county or a public owner is the adjacent landowner. We're clearing those sidewalks and making sure people can continue to use those facilities in the winter, and also the protected bike lane infrastructure that's been built over the last couple of years. This is something that we actually stopped at the onset of the pandemic, but we're looking forward to getting back in front of the community and with employers and making them, or encouraging them, to continue to use the telework and other tools that they've developed to cope with the public health crisis as a permanent part of their operations. And also to, as we move through this phase, to encourage people to come back to transit and use the services that we're providing. We've continued to work on joint development and redevelopment of parking resources. This project was completed a few years ago, the Capitol Crescent Garage in downtown Bethesda. Garage 3, which is I think the lofts in Silver Spring, was opened last fall. And we are starting to work, and we're about to release a notice of intent to begin negotiations for lots 24 and 10, which is the Farm Women's Market site in Bethesda, for a combination of residential, retail, and open space park development on top of that. So that's been important also in transforming the way parking looks, feels, operates in our community, and providing more benefit than just having parking spaces, but a place for people to live, shop, and an asset that is appreciated in the environment. Electric vehicle charging is something we've continued to push very hard. Most of our parking facilities have EV charging, and we are moving towards a couple of new initiatives. Just this week, we posted new guidelines for private EV charging in the right-of-way. So if you have a house that doesn't have a driveway, we've worked closely with Department of Permitting Services to develop a program that you can install a charging station near the sidewalk for you to charge your vehicle and not have cords across sidewalks and other tripping hazards. And we are starting to figure out how to do public EV charging on street. So we're going to be advancing that over the next several months. That's it for the slides. And I know you had a number of questions about how the COVID situation has impacted us and what we've been working on. A big component of this has been working closely with our employees, particularly the McGeo representatives who represent our bus operators, highway service workers, and other staff. And we have had a good collaboration with those groups, and they bring ideas to us and we bring ideas to them about how we can make changes to our operation so that we're minimizing the risk. There's obviously risk in everything we do, but minimizing the risk for contact between potentially infected individuals and the operators, and also protecting our passengers if we happen to have an operator who was infected with the disease. And we have had some employees affected by this. You probably saw a couple weeks ago, we had a motor pool attendant in Silver Spring who passed away from this. We had another employee who was diagnosed around the same time, who is now recovered and is off a ventilator and looking to leave the hospital. But our experience has been better than many transit operators, largely because we took protective measures well ahead of when it seemed like that's what needed to be done. We did it because we wanted to do everything we could at the time. Councilmember Glass mentioned the masks, but the most important thing we did was suspend the fare collection and implement rear door boarding to give greater separation in that case. We've had a number of challenges with the parking system. A lot of people were home in the CBDs, living in apartments when they weren't accustomed to being home during the daytime. So we've made a parking facility in each of the parking lot districts free, so people can leave their vehicles there for a long term and not incur monthly payments on the parking or not incur fines from having their car there for too long. That's been effective, as have the curbside pickup options we've provided in each of the parking lot districts, so that people can make a quick stop at a business, pick up either food or whatever other goods they need and move on without worrying about getting a ticket or other enforcement actions. Open streets has been an interesting topic. The first one that we've implemented is Arlington Road, extending from Little Falls Parkway up towards the Bethesda CBD. In the next week or two, we'd like to get that extended all the way to Bradley Boulevard so that it makes a better connection to the CBD. The next phase of those that we're likely to implement are going to be coordinated with the reopening of some businesses. We're working right now with the Bethesda Urban Partnership, with Silver Spring Regional Office, with Wheaton, with the Mid-County Regional Office, and in Germantown with the Up-County Regional Office, to understand how we can reallocate space within the right-of-way to allow those businesses to open and do as much business as they can, given the spacing limitations that are still going to be in place. So that's going to be a big focus for us over the coming weeks. There have been questions about residential neighborhoods and how this applies in residential neighborhoods. I think what we're going to do is try to advance projects like the Glenmont to Aspen Hill Greenway that's been in planning and design for a little bit of time. And folks have asked about whether streets can be closed for periodic gathering. And we can use our block permit program to do that. It was traditionally developed for people to have a block party. This is a block party, but for a different purpose. It's to have the space for people to get out and move around. While we can do that, we have two challenges with it that we're concerned about. One is the impacts to other people who may not participate in those dialogues and decisions about how to use their street differently, and whether or not we have unintended consequences for those folks. And secondly, it's just a resource issue, which we've been, we essentially have an operation that's able to do a couple block parties a week typically. We don't have large inventories of traffic control, temporary traffic control equipment sitting around. So doing anything on a more broad basis in a county of this size is going to be challenging for us. But if there are locations where groups of neighbors want to do this and we get, requests for that, we're happy to explore that with those neighbors and see if something can be done that is beneficial to that community and doesn't have too many unintended consequences. So that's kind of where we are on open streets. Councilmember Glass mentioned we're working with the planning department, and we are both to define more robust policies for this should we end up in this situation again, and also to understand what are the real opportunities for this and where are the places that it makes sense and doesn't make sense. So we're looking forward to advancing that, but we don't want to keep that from doing the things we know we need to do now, where there's a clear need in business districts to get streets more available for commerce to resume. With Ride-On, we're still carrying 10 to 15,000 passengers per day, which is about a quarter, a fifth to a quarter of the normal ridership. Every bus I see has a passenger on it, which is, I think, great. It's good that people are able to make use of this and continue to make the trips that they need to make. We have started our work to ramp back up our transit services, but I think it's going to look different when it comes back than it did when it went away. We are, I think, going to focus on our higher ridership corridors first to make sure we have enough service that people can maintain distance on the vehicle and we're not overwhelmed. And then we're going to have to be very deliberate about what services we bring back, because we will have some issues getting our workforce ramped back up. And we expect to see some budget challenges, and we don't want to restore services and then take them away quickly after that. So we're trying to align both those processes so that we get the core operations back in place before things that may not be quite as heavily used or as essential. Bus lanes, we're not really in a position to study or implement that in our current operating mode, and most of the places where bus lanes could be implemented are state highways, and I know they're dealing with their own challenges at the moment. So it's not something we've really been able to turn our attention to, but our transit operations have benefited from the traffic reductions. So there's no question about that. When we first developed the essential service plan and then we went and operated it, we had quite a bit of extra time in the schedules, and we were able to restore a few more routes than we thought we could at the service levels we were at because of the reduced traffic. And we do want to find ways to take advantage of some of these changes that have happened. And I think that traffic volumes will be permanently reduced because so many people have figured out how to take advantage of teleworking. While most of us would prefer not to do it every day for every element of our working, to have a couple days in the office to interact with colleagues, I think it will be a permanent feature for county operations and for most other businesses. And with these recovery ideas, we are working closely with WMATA and trying to be consistent with what they're doing, but not necessarily exactly the same as what they're doing. We know that people use Ride-On for different reasons than they use WMATA, and we need to tailor our service to the way people need to use it. There was a lot of emphasis on BRT and Councilmember Glass's comments. The Flash project on 29 was supposed to open this month. We had a number of delays with manufacturers of equipment in Michigan. They have started to reopen, and I think we're getting the deliveries of that equipment now. So the stations are continuing to be constructed now that that flow of material has restarted. We think that the construction work will probably be done next month. The technology fit out work will follow that in probably July and August. But we're not quite sure when we're going to start the service yet, because we're building that into our overall recovery model to figure out when the right time to start the new services in the context of us restarting everything out. Design is continuing on Veers Mill Road. The council retained the design funding for the preliminary engineering that had been provided last year for that, and that work is under contract and continuing. We had a request for information that went out in the fall for the 355 project that we got a lot of good response from constructors, from design firms, from financiers, from potential operators for BRT on 355. We are planning to release a new request for proposals for transit-related design services and project development services. We have engineering on-calls that have been used to do a lot of the work so far. And through the RFI, we recognize that there's a number of pieces of technical expertise we need that aren't readily available through the existing contracting mechanisms. So we're going to be getting transit-specific design contractors on board. And I think that will help us develop more affordable projects, get them done faster, and also, frankly, help our transit division implement new technology and changes to the regular transit operation more effectively. So we're pretty excited about moving that forward. In the meantime, we have advanced a lot of the groundwork for the design of 355, the utility location work and the survey work is underway now. And we have a specialty contractor evaluating the proposed design, which is median in the south and reversible median in the north, to figure out whether there's ways we can economize on that by maybe doing more lane repurposing and addressing some of the areas of constrained right-of-way. We've also started to advance a conversation about contingent right-of-way contracts. There's this idea that in the Whiteflint sector in particular, landowners would dedicate the right-of-way so that the county wouldn't have to incur those costs. But landowners were being asked to do that without an assurance that we would actually build this project. So they'd be giving something away with no assurance that they'd be getting the service back. So we've started a conversation about saying, well, what if instead of asking you to dedicate the right-of-way, we ask you to enter into a contract to provide the right-of-way to the county at a nominal cost once we commit construction funding to the project, so that they have an assurance that it will actually be built. We're hoping that reduces some of the cost and some of the friction that's been happening in that part of the project. So we're pretty excited about moving those forward. We had a lot of good work on financing strategies last fall. Thank tools like TIFIA, which don't have bond reserves, so we can make more productive use of the revenue streams that are available, and some thinking about new revenue streams that might be made available. But obviously that whole dynamic of, where money comes from and what it's used for is a little bit different now than it was when that work occurred. So we're going to continue working on it, but we're going to have to build that into the broader discussion of the county's budget and capital program.
Thank you so much for that presentation and information. We do have some questions. And so I will read the questions, and I have a couple of questions that were sent to us ahead of time. And after those 4 questions, Tina is going to actually pick up some questions from the chat and ask those as well. So the first question I have is on BRT. BRT Route 29 will set the tone for further BRT in Montgomery County. If BRT on 29 is a success, drivers on 29 see the rapid buses moving along more quickly than the cars. This will lead to strong public support and expanding BRT to other routes. On the flip side, if BRT on 29 is stuck in traffic, then folks will say, why bother? And no further BRT routes will be created. County Executive Mark Elrich promised BRT across the county. What will MCDOT do to assure that the Route 29 BRT will run in dedicated bus-only lanes for the entire length of Route 29?
The project that's under construction now has the use of the shoulders in the northern 40% or so of the project. So the buses will be bypassing the congestion at the traffic signals in the northern part, Tech Road, Greencastle, and a couple others. So there's a lot of travel time savings from that. But as we get into the southern portion of the corridor, it will be in mixed traffic. So it won't be moving faster than the cars, but it'll certainly be moving faster than the local bus operations on that corridor because there won't be any delays with fare collection, and the number of stops is significantly lower. We'll be boarding and alighting through all doors of the bus. So we will have time savings on that. We've got quite far in the study to implement additional dedicated lanes on this corridor. We'll be rolling that information out later this spring and into the summer. We'd intended to have public workshops. That's obviously not going to happen. So we're going to publish a lot of the information online for people to review, and we'll have some virtual open house meetings about that project. The scenario that's looking most promising is a managed lane scenario, so an HOV 3+ bus operation in the inside against the median on 29. Some of it is accomplished by repurposing one of the existing travel lanes. Some of it is accomplished by widening and hardening part of the inside shoulder. That will make a big difference. And then part of it, is accomplished by switching one of the managed lanes, the directional lanes inside the Beltway from general traffic to bus and HOV between downtown Silver Spring and the Beltway. That'll make it, we think there's a lot of promise to that. We've been having conversations with Mcdot about implementation of that. We're getting good feedback from Mcdot that it's a type of solution that they could support. So we'll be starting to push that forward this year, and we'll have conversations with the community and then with the council and Mcdot about how a project like that could get funded. I mentioned on the other corridors, we're in design on 355 and on Veers Mill Road. And then the planning, next year, the planning phase will start for New Hampshire Avenue. And then a year and a half after that, it'll start for the North Bethesda Transitway. So this program is rolling forward. And as we said, when we implemented the 29 service like this, what we're putting on the road is what we could afford given the resources that we had and what we had consensus around implementing. And I think Councilmember Glass said it well, we all were at an extreme state of planning fatigue and knew we had to get something going and build from there rather than continue to plan and plan and plan. So that's the approach we're taking, but the planning has continued while we've been constructing and deploying new service so that we're going to be ready to do next phases of that soon. I'm confident that if we had kept planning, we'd still be planning on 29 and we wouldn't have service starting anytime soon.
The next question that we have is on COVID-19 presents the Montgomery County transportation system with both challenges and opportunities. What do you see as the three biggest opportunities to offer once the pandemic has receded? More folks, more options for getting where they want and need to go without using their cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing people have learned from this is how effective you can be working at home. And I think that's going to have a lasting impact on travel patterns. It will shift travel out of the peaks. It will reduce the overall volume on our roads. So I think that's going to be a lasting impact. People have come to appreciate walking and biking, mostly as a means of recreation, more so than for purpose-driven travel right now. But you know now that you can ride your bike, which you may not have done in years. You know now how to walk around your neighborhood. And one of the things that is important is when you're walking and biking, you notice things you don't notice when you're driving. The condition of the infrastructure, how to make little changes that would make things better. So I think you're going to have more awareness of the importance of those facilities and how having adequate walking and biking facilities is really as important as the traffic flow. I think that's going to be a lasting shift from this. A negative that we're going to see from this is fear of transit and fear of crowds. Some of that may be legitimate, but it's probably not legitimate in the long run. And we're going to have to redouble our efforts to make people who don't need to use transit comfortable using transit and getting back to a place where people see it as a viable option, that they're not putting themselves at risk by using it. And frankly, I don't think you're putting yourself at using it even under the conditions we're in. measures have been taken to make it as safe as we can and limiting the crowds. But people see it as a confined space with a lot of people they don't know in it. So that's a fear generating activity. We're going to have to work hard to restore confidence in that mode.
May I add something here? I've read that that Tokyo is continuing to use their subways. Everybody wears masks, and they have a very low rate of the disease there. So it may be some kind of a head shift for us, but I don't think that the future of transit is, the longer term future is terrible. I don't think so.
And, you know, it will take us time to recover too on the operational side. So if everybody shows up the day the stay-at-home order is lifted, we have a problem we're not going to be able to manage.
All right, so with that, next question is, with traffic low right now, but expected to rebound soon, I don't know how soon that would be, advocates and agencies like WMATA have been encouraging local dots to use this time to convert travel lanes into bus-only lanes. Bus-only lanes also make bus service more efficient and reliable, which we'll need so that riders can effectively social distance. Will you establish a bus prioritization team to create bus-only lanes on Montgomery's major transit corridors?
Not immediately. We're still working in a reduced model, and we really don't have the resources right now to pursue that in the immediate time frame. But as we look at these corridors, that is something that we continue to evaluate, whether or not we can repurpose lanes on these roads. For example, I mentioned in the 355 work we're doing now, we are evaluating whether some lanes can be repurposed there to make the bus lanes rather than new construction. So we were working on it from that end. You probably know that on Wayne Avenue, we implemented a bus-only lane near the Silver Spring Transit Center. That's the first in Montgomery County. Kind of did it rogue without really seeking permission to do it. And in areas like that, we'll continue to try to pursue that. Most of the major transit corridors, like I mentioned, are state highway routes where we don't have the authority to implement something like that. But we'd be happy to work with State Highway Administration in places where either we, through the ride-on operation, MTA through their bus operation, or WMATA, see real value in implementing that. We're happy to explore and push that with the State Highway Administration. Our network is more challenging than others. We have a plan that was developed, a plan for the county that was developed at the height of the suburbanizing era, with large arterials and not any other through streets really. And so it's hard to make those kinds of changes here. It's much easier in older grid cities like the district, where you have parallel routes that can share demands. We don't really have that option in most of our corridors. Definitely something we'd like to do, but it's not easy to accomplish.
Okay, well, next question is, thank you for that. What new transit lines in Montgomery County does MCDOT envision creating if Hogan's highway expansion project gets approved and funding for transit starts coming in from tolls collected?
Oh, that's a great question. First and foremost, we want to advance the projects that have made their way into design more quickly. So the number one priority, I think, would be the 355 BRT, getting that designed and in operation as fast as possible. In my mind, I've had these tied to a nexus to those highways. The second most important one would be a reimagined corridor cities transit way. That's an area where there might be the ability to repurpose lanes as bus lanes on existing roads before the traffic volumes from redevelopment occur, so that we set the tone for what that part of the county is. And we have started advancing a transit service vision for that area. I've called it a short term, but until a infrastructure heavy solution like the CCT can really be built, this network approach, I think, could make a lot of difference in that part of the county. Those are the two that are most important for the county itself. But coupled with that is park and ride investment in the up county and a series of express routes that could use the toll lane infrastructure, whether those are from city of Frederick, Hagerstown, places further afield, or whether we intercept people in Clarksburg and make connections at a couple of activity centers, perhaps Shady Grove, perhaps Medical Center or Grosvenor, maybe even directly to White Flint. And then another corridor that we've talked substantially about is a White Flint to Montgomery Mall to Tyson's Corner interstate corridor, which would be kind of a new service model where we'd be operating service well outside the county.
Thank you. Well, my last question, and then I will pass it.
Shruti, could I just interrupt, because there were a couple questions that came up that are related to the 274.95. So if I could throw them in here.
Yes, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. You referenced telecommuting a little earlier. Can you make any comments about how much telecommuting might reduce congestion on 274.95 as related to the widening project?
I don't have any data on that to support that. We know that's how business has continued. I mean, we've moved to 80% telework right now for all of our office staff or more. So no, I don't have that type of information. I think it will impact the amount of travel and demand for those facilities, but I don't have any detail.
Okay, and one other question. Back in December, the county had asked Mdot for data on traffic data on 495 and 270, and I don't know if it would be submitted to you or the county executive, but have you seen data like that from Mdot?
I haven't seen it, but I suspect it will all be embedded in the draft EIS when they release it.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. Shruti, go ahead.
All right, last question from me, and then back to Tina.
Sure.
And before I actually ask the last question, I want to also just give a shout out to Sean Emerson from Council Member Tom Hucker's office, who joined us at the meeting. The next question is, many of our most crowded neighborhoods lack sideways or have very narrow sidewalks and streets, which makes walking and rolling with social distancing challenging. This summer, there will be no pools to swim in, no summer camps, no way to do play dates with friends, and lots of kids who will be bored and in need of exercise. Would it be possible to open some of the neighborhood greenways that are laid out in the bicycle master plan to pedestrians and close them to cars so that people can safely exercise with their children 1 or more days a week? Are there ways that residents can help in this process? And what are the key obstacles to making this a reality? And how can we partner with you for the solutions?
Yeah, those are good questions. It is possible to implement some of them. We are looking to implement the Glenmont to Aspen Hill one as soon as we can. But none of these will close the streets fully to traffic. Almost every street in the county serves adjacent land use in people's homes and businesses. So the greenway ideas are to reduce any through traffic using these streets, which aside from some limited streets, we don't have a lot of through traffic problems. We do have them. They're not non-existent, but it's not on all of our neighborhood streets. So we won't have streets that are fully closed, I don't think, unless all of the people who access their property from that street agree that that's the right solution. And that is that block party permit process that has been around for a very long time, where owners of the property abutting the road come together and request closure of the road for a period of time. And we can definitely work with neighborhoods who want to do that. Part of the challenge of the open streets dialogue we've been having is we've had sort of general requests to do this. And I don't think there's no fundamental opposition to implementing open streets. The question is where, when, and is there agreement among the affected people that that's what we should do in those locations. So I would say the thing that you can do to be most helpful with this is to tell us where and when you want to do it, so that we can evaluate with the people who want to do it how it could happen, and what would be required to make it work. And once those things are known, we can address them and get it done. There is a resource limitation, obviously, on the amount of traffic control equipment that's available, and whether or not we would want to, pivot priorities from other things that our resources are being spent on to make more street closures like this happen. That's a question that we can ask when we hit that limit. But right now, we need to move from the general concept to when, where, and how do people want to do it. The things that we know and the things that we're moving on ourselves are the streets that connect to the parkways that have been made available to try to get more open space and better connections to those parkways. And like I said earlier, the second most important thing we want to do is have as much of our resource available as possible to allow the business centers to start to reopen and have more space for people to circulate and conduct commerce in the downtowns that rely on the public streets for the business support. This isn't a shopping center issue. This is a commercial business district issue that we really need to get ahead of. And we're working with our partners on that now, and that's our next most significant priority. And then we start to talk about the greenways and are happy to work with individual locations or neighborhoods that want to do the block party approach for specific streets in those neighborhoods.
Thank you. I can't wait for the block party. We need that. All right, well, Tina, back to you. And I think there's a very good question from Lindsay that may be connected to that, but I'm passing it on to you now.
Okay, this comes from our Maryland chapter Sierra Club. What support does MCDOT want from the state, and what type of oversight do you envision for transit funding for the CARES Act?
Oh, that's a good question, and it's kind of asked and answered. What happened with the CARES Act is there were allocations to urbanized areas or other areas based on a couple of federal funding programs. The largest part of our allocation was provided to the Washington metro area. It was about $1 billion provided to the metro region. And then there was a smaller component that went to the state for rural areas. What ended up happening, and there was a lot of negotiation about this, and we had the full support of MTA and Secretary Slater, was to use the apportionment formula that Mdot was using for the Baltimore region for the Washington region. And that resulted in about $28 million in transit aid from the Washington region to the county. On a personal level, probably less than I think is fair, but it was done in a fair and equitable way for all of Maryland and for all of the DC region. And then we received another about $1 million in aid directly from the state. The way that we'll be using that is to cover operating expenses, and it will largely offset our fare revenue loss for fiscal year 20 and much of 21. So that allocation has already happened, and we've already received our award letter for that grant from Mdot.
Do you think that Montgomery County will continue to use telework for its employees after the shutdown is opened up a bit?
Yes, I think almost every department will.
Interesting, okay.
A lot of barriers were overcome through force with this. There was no option, therefore people figured out how to use the tools.
Right. I used to work in the federal government, and people would want to telework, but the bosses thought unless they saw your butt in a chair, they didn't know if you were working or not. And I think this whole telework has gotten past that.
And as we recover as a county, I'm actually on the county group that's trying to figure out how we reconstitute the workplace. We're not going to be able to have everybody come back at once. So telework is going to be extended as part of that, and I think it will take root. And like I said, I don't think there's anybody who wants to do it to the extent we're doing it now.
Right.
Everybody all the time. But I think it will be permanent.
Okay, thank you. It's good to hear from a transportation expert. We mull that around a lot by ourselves, but it's
Right.
interesting to hear your viewpoint on that. Thank you. Somebody asked what is going to happen to the Bethesda Women's Farm Market?
Well, you probably know there's a sketch plan that's been approved by the planning board for a development that expands the retail space available in the farm market and constructs a housing development adjacent to it and around it, but not attached to it. And part of that engages our parking lot. So we
Right.
are about to issue a notice of intent to begin negotiations with that development entity so that the parking can be replaced and integrated with the parking for the Farm Women's Market and the adjacent buildings. And park would be developed on the surface.
One quick question and then a longer question.
Sure.
Quick question, how many flex vehicles does the county have?
I forget, but I think it's 7.
Okay, not a whole lot, just
Yeah,
the pilot. Okay, longer question. Governor Hogan committed to walk cycle lanes on the American Legion Bridge as part of the widening. Do you know if there might also be rail facilities when the American Legion Bridge is redone under Hogan's plan?
I don't think it's currently envisioned as such. And I think they will probably resist that for cost reasons.
Sure, yeah.
But it's something we can continue to ask for and push for through the environmental and P3 development process. I think, when they redid the Wilson Bridge,
Mhm.
there was space reserved for future rail or transit. And I think we may be able to accomplish something similar on the Legion Bridge.
Okay, so word to advocates, we should push for that. I will say I was quite surprised that the space for cycling came through so quickly, that given what happened on the Harry Nice Bridge. So
yeah, the dynamic's pretty different here in that you have suburban communities on either side, and you've got nationally recognized trail network on one side with the C&O Canal. And I think Fairfax County has a trail plan to connect here. So the pressure to have that there is much stronger. And as they're negotiating with the National Park Service to get their required permissions to build on Park Service land, I'm sure some of their thinking is that linking these trail networks and national park land is a way to help ease that conversation.
good point. Here's a question. Do you have traffic signal recall throughout the county?
We don't. We have traffic signal recall implemented in all of the CBDs and some surrounding areas. And it's something that, as we've got requests for specific locations, we've gone to look to see if we can implement it and have added to the PED recall, but we have not been able to do it everywhere. It's too large an undertaking for us. And one of the main reasons is that we don't own all the signal equipment. And changing to a recall mode is a design change that has a whole process associated with it.
Okay, and could you just define traffic signal recall? Because I had to look it up. Yeah.
Most of our traffic signals have pedestrian push buttons. So much like there's detectors on cameras for cars or in the road for cars, we rely on the push button to detect when a pedestrian needs to use the crosswalk. If we have it set on pedestrian recall, which is what we've done in our business districts, the pedestrian phase comes up every signal cycle, whether there's somebody looking to cross or not. And there's been a push that having people touch the button every time they need to cross the street is not something we want people doing. So we've been exploring locations kind of as we can with the limited field resources that are available right now to do those and to correct other accessibility issues that are causing significant problem now, but we haven't been able to move to do it countywide. So it's, it's 1,000 locations in all kinds of different settings, and some we control, some we don't.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
My daughter uses her elbow to
Her
overcome.
elbow. There you go. I think you touched on this, and I might have been taking notes during it, but there's a question that if you didn't answer, or could you repeat again? During the social distancing required this summer, can some streets in commercial areas such as Fenton Street and Silver Spring be closed to through traffic so dining could take place?
Yes, we're working with the urban districts on that. I don't know if
Okay.
the street is going to be a candidate, but it might be. And we're evaluating things like switching to one-way traffic circulation on an interim basis, so we can
Okay.
increase the circulation space or outdoor dining space and retain parking, because we know the parking is pretty essential for the pickup drop-off
True.
and delivery type activities that happen from those businesses. So yes, we've initiated a conversation with the 3 urban districts and Germantown, not an urban district, but having a similar retail setting.
Well, thank you so much. And I wanted to read to you a comment from our Maryland chapter. It says, "Thank you, Mr. Conklin, for many excellent initiatives in Montgomery County and for your steady leadership."
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I've got to say, I had no idea that I'd be starting this endeavor by responding to this unprecedented health emergency.
I know.
Every day you think you've reached a stable place, and then every day something new crops up. So
Yeah.
it has been an interesting time. And I'm very much looking forward to getting our longer term important initiatives moving again at their full pace so that we can realize the objectives we're looking to realize. But at the same time, it's been important to manage through this and keep services operating and safety in place and access to people who need it. So I don't regret the challenge that we've endured here over the last 4 months now, but I'm certainly looking forward to move to a new state of more normal. And I hate to
Amen.
think
Yes.
that every time somebody says this is the new normal, I cringe, because I want the new normal to be something different than this.
I'm 110% with you. I really appreciate all your leadership and the work you are doing in outreach, and just as you say, the huge new challenges that this has brought on.
Yep. And you all know this well. We won't always be aligned in everything we do, but when we're out of line with you, definitely let us know so that we can reevaluate what we're doing.
We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone else who joined us. And of course, you can go to Sierra Club Montgomery County website and continue to keep track of what we are advocating for. All our position letters are on our website, and contact information, feel free to reach out to us. So thanks everyone, good night, and have a great week.
All right, enjoy New
Well, stay
Zealand.
safe.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. We appreciate it.